Hello everyone, it's Mariners Fanatic back with another YouTube video, and in today's video we'll be talking about 10 Mariners players that have something to prove heading into spring training and this 2020 season. It is ranked the 10th player on this list. I don't think it's as important for them to show out as much as the number one player on this list, for example. So just a quick little explanation there, and with that we'll jump into the list. Coming in at number 10 on the list, we have Ken Giles. An under-the-radar signing in the offseason heading into 2021, Ken Giles went under Tommy John surgery, missed the entire season, but Jerry Dipoto signed him to a contract so that we could get him for this year. It's a very low-risk, high-reward signing. We have him for sure for this season, and then there's also a club option for 2023. So if Giles shows out this season for us, then he immediately is probably going to get that contract for 2023, and we have a proven closer. But he does kind of have to prove that he's back to his old ways. He was injured, of course, in that 2020 season, so he didn't really pitch much there. So he hasn't really been on the field for a significant amount of time since 2019. Overall, for his career, he's been very good. 2.74 ERA, 2.45 FIP, 115 saves, and a 12.3 strikeout per nine. All great things coming out of a guy who's probably going to be our closer for this year. So that's number 10 on the list, Ken Giles. Number 9 on the list, and there's a few different players you could probably go with this in the lower part of the list here, but I have Aaron Fletcher. Now, I've talked a lot about needing lefties in the pen. Misevich, I think, will be back, and I hope that Misevich can keep doing what he's doing. I'd like to see a little bit more out of him, but ultimately a second lefty in the pen, in my opinion, is pretty important. We saw how important it was for the Atlanta Braves in the World Series with Matzek, Smith, and Minter, and I'd like to have at least 2 lefties in the pen, as I've mentioned before. Fletcher, he's only pitched 8 innings for us over the past 2 years, and it hasn't really gone well, but he has an opportunity to change that. This year, he really needs to go out and claim a spot. He doesn't necessarily have a spot right now, but if he can go out and claim that spot, saves us a little money in the free agency market, not having to look for that left-handed arm. So that's number 9 with Aaron Fletcher. Moving on to number 8, I have Jake Fraley. Now, Fraley was actually not bad if you look at his season as a whole, but unfortunately, there were just some consistency issues. Obviously, he had the injury at the start of the year, and then he got sick in the middle part of the season. So most of his April was wiped out, and then he didn't play a whole lot in May either. However, he was pretty good in June and July, but unfortunately, August and September were not as kind to him, and he struggled through that and didn't play as much. But he still carried a 1.6 WAR and a 104 OPS plus, so he was doing it on both sides of the ball. Out in left field, playing good defense. Obviously, we all have that memorable catch from Detroit in our minds. And then he had some good offense, showed some power, the ability to walk. But the second half of the season, in those August and September months, he really fell off and just didn't produce for us. So I just need to see some more consistency out of Fraley. We know he's a good player. He's got the pop. He's got the defense. He's got the batter's eye. He just needs to be a little more consistent in his hitting. Moving on to number 7, we have another bounce-back candidate in Taylor Trammell. Now, Trammell's defense, again, like Fraley's, was pretty much solid the whole time he was up here. For my opinion, I think his arm is a little bit weak, but in center field, you can get away with that a little bit more than the corner outfield spots. He has the pop. We've seen it. That bat is quick. It's really not about that for him. For him, I see some holes in his swing, a lot of swing and miss. Obviously, he was striking out a lot. He just needs to find that consistency. The one thing that is concerning is after his second stint up in the big leagues, when he went back down to AAA, he did not perform all that well down the stretch, and that's why we didn't see him at all in September. So I'm hoping that that was just a blip, and I know he's probably putting in work over the offseason, and I'd like to see him back up with the club, because he basically has one more shot with the big club to prove his worth with Julio Rodriguez and other guys coming behind. He had the opportunity last year to show it. He showed glimpses of it. Now he just needs to capitalize on it to really take hold of that fourth outfield spot. Moving on to number 6, I have Justin Dunn. That fifth rotation spot is wide open, and it's Dunn's for the taking. Dunn has pitched okay for the Mariners so far, to a 5-4 record, 3.9 ERA, 108 ERA plus, but a 5.61 FIP, which is not good. His walks per 9 is at 6. He's basically walking a guy almost every inning, sometimes multiple guys in an inning. And he's really not getting deep into games when he has. I think his longest start was 5 2/3 or maybe 6 innings. To be a starter, he has to get deep into ball games. He has to throw less pitches. The strikeout per 9 is at 8.1, which is, it's okay. It's not great, but ultimately it's more about that walks per 9. Dunn is the guy for that fifth spot, and I'd like to see him take it because I do really like Dunn. But ultimately, if he can't get his walks under control, he's going to start to see those opportunities go away and potentially losing out on that fifth spot in the rotation. Moving on to number 5, we have Abraham Toro. Toro has some big shoes to fill if he's going to be starting at third base in replacing Kyle Seager. He played 60 games with us last year, and he did fine. He was really good in July and August, and then September was really bad. He did not hit well at all. Defense was okay, but second base wasn't his primary position, so there were some issues there. Ultimately, I'd like to see him claim that third base spot. If not, it's probably going to go to a free agent or maybe a trade acquisition, which is fine too. But the whole reason we got Toro and why he's here is because he was blocked by Bregman, Altuve, and he really wasn't going to play shortstop. So there was no path for him in Houston. We've given him a shot here, and he did some to prove that he can play at the big league level. But now we just need to see a little bit more, and I need him to take that spot and own it. Some people might already think that he's proven himself, but for me, I need a little more because that September was not very good, and he hasn't played a whole lot of third base for us yet, so I'd like to see more out of him there. Coming in at number 4, we have Justus Sheffield. This is Sheffield's last shot, and they may not even give him that shot, depending on how spring training goes. So he really, really has to prove himself if he wants to stay on the ball club. Since we acquired him from the Yankees, he has pitched to an 11-12 record, 5.5 ERA, 77 ERA plus, 4.66 FIP, 4.2 walks per 9, and a 7.8 K per 9. The walks per 9, again, is high. You really don't want to see it above 3, and even that's a little bit pushing it, depending on what role you are, starter, bullpen, whatever. The FIP is encouraging, shows some signs that he can get back to form. If you take out that 2020 season, his stats are a lot worse. Sheffield definitely has a lot to prove. He's not going to get that 5th starting spot, but he could claim a lefty spot in the bullpen, as maybe being a long reliever or a spot starter or something like that. Because ultimately, I never want to see these guys fail, but at the end of the day, at some point, you got to move on. And if a guy's just not showing you what he can do and being consistent, then it's time to move on. So this is Sheffield's last shot heading into the 2022 season. Moving on to number 3, we have Cal Raleigh. Raleigh struggled quite a bit in the 2021 season. He only played 47 games for us though. He did bat 180 and his peripheral stats hitting wise were not great. His defense was okay. There's some things that can be cleaned up. But overall, the catching position is up for grabs. Dipoto has said they're not really going to go out and get a catcher this offseason, but that's likely to change for next offseason, depending on how this season goes. Tom Murphy had a down year, but he's a clubhouse leader. Still hits well against lefties, plays okay defense, so having Tom there for now is great. But Cal Raleigh needs to claim that spot. He needs to prove he can hit at the big league level. He tore up the minors and tore up AAA, but since being up last season, he didn't really show what he could do. He looked lost at the plate a lot of times. I'd love to see Raleigh claim that spot and be the guy, and then we can have Tom Murphy as the veteran backstop that can still be a clubhouse guy. But ultimately, if he can't get that done, then it's time to move on and look elsewhere. So this is a big turning point season for Cal Raleigh and at catcher for the Seattle Mariners. Moving on to number 2, we have Evan White. Now, he's still only played in 84 games between 2020 and 2021. Yes, he did play the full 2020 season, but of course it was shortened, and he was just getting his feet underneath him. There was a lot of promise. Even though he didn't hit all that well in 2020, you saw stuff you liked. 2021 was not good. You thought he was going to take strides forward, and he just didn't. His defense is gold. We all know that. It's really just about the hitting and how he can get that bat going. And there's really not much else to say besides that. It's just the hitting for Evan White. Maybe he needs to start at AAA. I don't know. He did make the jump from AA to the big leagues, 2019 to 2020. So maybe he'll see some time there. But either way, whether he's in AAA or at the big league level, he's got to figure something out in this 2022 season if he's going to be with us for the long term. Finally, moving on to the number one player who needs to prove something heading into 2022 is Kyle Lewis. Now, you might think this is a bit over the top, but for me, I don't care about the 2020 Rookie of the Year. It's gone. It's in the past. Might be a little bit harsh for some people, but Kyle Lewis has to prove to me that he can do it consistently and not just in a 60-game season. I also need him to be healthy for a full season. I love Kyle Lewis. From what I've seen from him, his work ethic and all that. But at the end of the day, if those knees are not going to work, then his career is going to have a really hard time moving forward. Every Mariners fan wants to see Lewis succeed. Nobody wants him to fail. But we saw what he can do in 2019. We saw what he can do in 2020. We saw flashes of it again in 2021, but he couldn't stay healthy the whole season. In parts of 3 seasons, Lewis has only played 112 games. Obviously, the 2020 season was shortened, but you get the idea. We need him on the field, and now more than ever, with the uncertainty of the outfielder position. Yes, we have a lot of outfielders, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's many set in stone. So, that's my list. There may be some players that you disagree with, or some guys you think should be on this list, but this was what I was looking at, and kind of felt with our team needs and whatnot that is pretty valuable to us moving forward. So I'm hoping these guys can step it up as we head into this 2022 season soon, hopefully, as negotiating is still going on via the lockout. But regardless, I'm excited, and I can't wait for Mariners baseball. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, comment below, and I'll see you guys next time. Mariners Fanatic, out.